welcome to the show. Now, I'm sure, like me, you've noticed a growing number of electric vans, buses, and public service vehicles like bin lorries on our roads, which is fantastic news. But when a fleet operator is moving a whole fleet to electric, there are many challenges and significant changes that face them. The upfront cost, the need to secure sufficient power, installing the infrastructure, all whilst keeping the service reliable as well as cost and energy efficient. So is there another way to make this transition any easier and quicker? Well, today I'm delighted to be joined by Steven Meersman, co-founder of Zenobē, who's here to tell us about their solution, ETaaS, or Electric Transport as a Service. So welcome, Steven. Nice to have you here. I know that you talked to Dan last year, just before COP26, about what Zenobē is doing, innovative ways of installing big batteries. Just in case people haven't seen that, can you remind us what Zenobē do and what's going on?
Yeah, sure. Zenobē are battery specialists, and we really do that in two big areas. One is obviously the large grid-scale batteries, where we're helping the transmission grid go greener. But the other area where we're helping decarbonization is transport, which is trying to make electrification of buses, trucks, and other heavy-duty equipment, make that more cost effective and make that go faster effectively. And we do that by building the charging infrastructure, but also funding and bringing all these various bits together. So since we last spoke to Dan, actually, we've made a lot of progress. We've turned on 235 megawatts of batteries, electrified over 600 buses, turned on the first electric bus depot in Sydney, expanded into New Zealand with one of the biggest operators there, and convinced the local banks to really get behind this movement. We've then also managed on the UK side to get pension funds involved. That's really important because they can invest on a much longer horizon, which means costs again lower for all the bus operators that we're helping electrify. So finally, one of the things we're very excited about, which is very recent, is we're part of the team delivering Electric Town in Coventry. Which involves a project co-funded by the Department for Transport, but where we're electrifying over 200 buses for National Express in a phased rollout. And we're doing that under a new concept, which is Electric Transport as a Service.
So I understand that at the heart of Zenobē is where you see how all the different elements of the energy transition puzzle start to work together. And that's really important.
Yeah, no, that's the core of what we do. We look at things from an ecosystem perspective, and we like to think the whole system is actually circular, which means that if you improve one bit, it has a positive impact on the other, and you can really get things moving like a flywheel almost and accelerate and pick up pace. For us, those three bits are, on one side, the decarbonization of the energy grid and how electrifying everything will get us to the most environmentally sustainable solution possible. We believe that financing sector should be a part of this because really these things cost money, so how you optimize that is also very important. And then transport's very exciting because if you look at last mile deliveries, buses, these are the vehicles that do the most amount of miles in any given day or any given year. So if you can decarbonize those first, it can really have a big impact in a short amount of time.
That's great, but can you explain in a bit more detail what ETaaS is and how that's going to affect things in the future?
Yeah, sure. So if you look at an electrification of a depot, say for instance Coventry, the one we were talking about for Electric Town, you need power supply, you need chargers, you need the planning of the parking systems, you need maintenance, you need to bring in the power supply, you might have solar panels on the roof, you need to work out how are the drivers going to get trained on the buses and all these sorts of things. So how do you bring that all together? And that's what ETaaS is about. What we effectively say is we'll take all the stress and the hassle of decarbonization away from the operator, manage all those risks for them. So what we effectively do is we take all the various bits and put them together in a simple service guarantee. So we will say if the vehicle isn't charged on time, it didn't leave on time, it didn't have the right spare parts, it wasn't on the right temperature, or anything goes wrong, it's our fault, and we pay a damage to the operators so that we're really putting our money where our mouth is and taking those risks away from them so they can focus on their core operation.
So in terms of batteries and buses and grid connection and solar panels on the roof of the depot, I'm guessing that the software that joins all those things together is a pretty critical element.
Yeah, for the orchestration, you really need to capture as much information and data as you can and then bring that together in clever software that we've developed in-house, which takes data from the vehicle, takes data from the charging, from the grid, puts it all together, and then comes up with an optimization algorithm to bring costs down without sacrificing reliability, but then also gets analyzed by our team on a continuous basis to try and bring in additional improvements. Like, for instance, with the current energy crisis going on, do you really want to be charging your bus to full every day, or can you actually take a bit more risk on that and then do a big top up on the weekend?
So then you're building these depots then with energy optimization. That's absolutely at the core of the whole project.
Correct, and we do that in different areas. I mean, obviously, one is, if you look at the charging infrastructure, wouldn't it be amazing that rather than a problem for the grid, that could actually be a solution? So that's something that we do. So in Coventry, we've got a stationary battery made out of old EV batteries that's at night peak shaving the grid, but then also during the day it is storing solar from the rooftops to lower the energy cost and providing services to national grid. And that income again then subsidizes the electric buses. So that's quite exciting. But the second piece is, as I mentioned, that battery is made out of old bus batteries, and that also brings us to what we're looking at here, is what do you do with batteries at the end of their life? Again, a lot of people saw it as a problem for recycling, but we're seeing it actually as an opportunity. You're taking the battery off because it can't do 250 miles with an 18-ton vehicle, right. Accelerating around street corners, but there's still a lot of life left in them, say for backup power, powering film shoots, powering construction sites, and in general just avoiding diesel generators. So that's what we started doing. We started putting these old batteries in these skids to effectively do these things. So that's again, this optimization piece requires you to think about that in advance, right? The customer wants to get as many miles as possible out of the vehicle. We want to get as good a battery back as possible, which is why we're then helping them use less energy. So less energy goes through the battery. They save on energy cost, we get a better battery pack. Or they save on energy, we get more flexibility on what time of night we charge, so we can lower cost again. So it's all these things you can only do if you're not thinking in silos, but looking at the full picture.
But then this second life use of batteries, it opens up a huge array of possibilities.
It does, because I mean these things have been built to be mobile. So if you look at what we're doing in our cities, we're trying to clean up the air. So we're getting diesel and petrol cars out, but then you still got these little yellow things standing on construction sites or a film shoot, just fuming nitrous oxide and CO2 into our lungs. So what we said is, well, actually, what if you can change that? And again, doing it in a way that it's not just ecologically sustainable, also financially sustainable. So say, for instance, you've got a construction site, you would get a big diesel generator to deal with all the big spikes. So when the crane needs to lift something, or the HVAC to keep everybody cool needs to cool things in. Diesel generators aren't actually very good at that. They're not good at being very spiky. So what they do is they oversize them. And then that thing turns to run on partial load, which is very inefficient. So just belching out fumes regardless of whether anyone is actually using the power. Now what you can do is you could say, well, actually, I'm going to go completely off grid and get one of these and maybe a temporary small power connection or nothing. Or you could actually say, I could get a much smaller diesel generator, run it at full load, which is much more fuel efficient, save on fuel, save money. In time, actually, it's just in time, because real electrification in Europe started in 2016, 2017. So if you think from an age perspective, these batteries, this tsunami of batteries is coming at us next year, the year after. So we said, well, we'll learn from practice now to be ready for that tsunami coming back. Now, obviously, we've still got time with our vehicles, so we still got 4 or 5 years to go before our own batteries come back. So this has about 160 kilowatt hours in it, but it can peak up in terms of our power output 140, 170 kilowatts. So right. It's really good at taking those spikes and reacting digitally rather than an analog generator. We're also working with partners on trying to squeeze even more into that.
So what is next for ETaaS then?
Well, actually, what's next is what was there before, in a way, coming back to that circular point. So the batteries that we were talking a lot about, the end of life of batteries. Well, actually, because we have a need for these batteries in our grid scale storage business, these other things that we're now doing with these Powerskids, we can work backwards from there. And by factoring that in, we lower the cost for the electric buses. And we can do that because we've got the ownership of the batteries in the first life. We personally think it's quite likely this will become the norm in the bus sector for electrification, similar to what happened with aircraft engine leasing way back when in the aircraft industry, or rolling stock companies in the rail sector. We're hoping to see that because we have all these additional benefits of taking risk away and making it cheaper, it'll become the norm for public transport, heavy duty transport, last mile deliveries, etc.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for explaining ETaaS and the second life battery solutions that you've got. Is there somewhere people can go to find out more about the work Zenobē is doing?
Sure. We've got a website, Zenobe.com. We're also on LinkedIn, social media, etc. I've got under the Zenobē name.
Very good. That's really good. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think it's amazing what you're doing. It's critically important that we decarbonise the public transport and the last mile delivery fleets. Those are really important things. We often talk about electric cars on Fully Charged Show, but this stuff I think is critically important. We've got to do it as soon as we can. And what you're creating and facilitating here is really helping to go towards that. So all power to you. That's all we've got time for. It's been really fascinating. If you want to find out more, all the links to Zenobē are in the description box beneath this video. Please do subscribe to this channel and tell your mates about it. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.